Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Sai. This is Yehud 11. The program is 11 at 11, heard each and every Thursday evening, Leil Shishi, between 11 and the midnight hour, which is an apt description of the devolving culture in our society. We are literally in the midnight hour, and I'm your humble host, trying to catalog to you the devolving culture, what we can do about it, various issues, and then later on in the program, of course, we're going to have Divrei Torah about Hanukkah and the fact that we spoke about last week that Hanukkah is actually it's not so much a revolutionary war against the Syrian Greeks, although manifestly and superficially it is, but sotto voce, sub rosa, the real story of Hanukkah is the fight of Jew against Jew, the fight of the Perushim, the Matisyo, the Chamish Bonav, as Rashi says, and the Misyavnim, the overwhelming amount of Klal Yisrael were Misyavni. And the funniest thing is that we celebrate Hanukkah. We're eating donuts, and we're having all kinds of concerts and everything else, and we're missing the forest for the trees, or we're missing the trees for the forest. We're celebrating anti-Misyavnikite, and I, your humble host, are cataloging the Misyavnikite that impacts on our community. But one of the issues that is of vital importance, and it has been important for now many, many, many decades, it's always been a part of society, has been the fact that there's it's far too prevalent that there is child abuse of an intimacy nature within the Orthodox community. And in the past few years, we've become increasingly aware of this, but a small ad in Hamedia caught my attention. And it's basically a hotline where some of the leading cutting-edge experts in the field of detecting child abuse, treating it, and most important, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. So this hotline features, if I could say so, the Gedolim in the fight against child abuse. And I'd like you to get a pen and paper, so those of you who are responsible parents and grandparents, uncles and aunts, cousins, that you should have this hotline number. And I feel it's a mitzvah rabbah to be informed from this. And I'm very edified, gratified, grateful, and appreciative that we're taping this now after 11 o'clock at night on Wednesday evening. And I have one of the foremost people who has been involved in this struggle and who has helped many, many, many people in terms of education. And we're going to hear from him firsthand. I'm talking about a very prominent, I think, pediatrician in the five towns, the Rockaway and Far Rockaway, Lawrence, five towns area, Dr. LIGHTMAN, who also, I have a particular korsatorf to him because I met him on one occasion, face to face, when he sponsored a Sheva Brachas for my son David, who's now married for something like 7 years or something like that to Batsheva Saad, and they're living in Eretz Yisrael. So once again, I'm thrilled to be reacquainted with Dr. LIGHTMAN, and I thank you for joining with us and for spending this time with us tonight. Dr. LIGHTMAN.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Thank you so much. So tell me, I know that we discussed off the phone, although I don't want to discuss this tonight, that you became aware of the child abuse situation. By the way, I would tell you parenthetically that Dov Wallowitz in Lawrence had a parsha with his daughter in the early 90s, a parsha that it took his daughter 13 months to get a get. And when that happened, he made a pledge, Dov Wallowitz did, that when he finishes his own daughter's parsha, and he was a philanthropist with rabbinic contacts, he's going to start an organization to help people having difficulties obtaining a get. And he put an ad in the Jewish press, and Ani HaKatan Yehuda Halevi Levin, in around 1991 or so, thereabouts, or 92, I answered the ad, and he and the late Jerry Bloom, Olav Shalom Yibad L'chaim, they founded an organization, and they funded me. And the organization, I gave it a name called Get Free, and I still have that phone number that rings to me. It's 718-NYC-GET-1. Although at that particular time, I was far more innocent and bought into, I don't want to get a field, I bought into a lot of what turned out to be one-sidedness, exaggerated claims of agunas, etc., etc. Nevertheless, the part I wanted to mention to you is that in those days it was the fledgling, the founding, the Nechama Wolfson, and I forget the name of the woman, I forget her name, but from your neck of the woods at the time, they founded Shalom Task Force. And I spent a certain amount of hours with them, and I'm listed ad hayom hazeh as a volunteer for Shalom Task Force, and the phone rings several times a year. And when it's appropriate, I help guide people through the get process, whether they be men or they be women, etc. So I just wanted to put that in. But tonight's discussion, unlike other nights where I do discuss in depth the divorce epidemic now, but tonight's discussion is dealing with child abuse. And I would like to know from you, as a doctor, you became sensitized, aware of it to the extent of it. So tell us a little bit about what you saw, what you learned, and your involvement in this whole parsha.
Okay, basically, as a pediatrician, as a physician, you look at the child in the totality of the family. So it's very important to see how they react with their parents, how they behave in an office, and you try and pick up from them and ascertain if there's anything going on in their life. If you see that they're not doing as well in school, they're more anxious, their behaviors are changing, then you want to find out what is really going on behind the scenes. Unfortunately, there's bullying, there may be domestic violence, and that's what the person you mentioned before was Esther Williams, together with Nechama Wilson, who spearheaded the Shalom Task Force, which actually started in my office because I was finding women who were hiding in a shelter with their children, escaping domestic abuse. So when you look at a child during a well exam, you look in its totality, and sometimes what will happen is a kid will show fears of anxiety, their body language, their posturing, and then when you question them in depth and detail as to what's going on, and you develop that relationship and connection with the child, they'll open up and tell you different things. The problem is that does child abuse or child molestation occur in the frum world? Unfortunately, it does. Are we much less than the non-frum world? Baruch Hashem, we are. Thank God. We're very, very much more aware of it today than we used to be in the past, and there's less hiding of such a stigma. The problem is that it's hard to believe that anybody would do this to another child. And it's not only that adults will inflict this upon a child, but other children can do it as well. So you have to realize that at least 1/3 of cases can occur between children that are both under the age of 18 years. And this is usually when one child might be more powerful than the other one, either physically or through emotional coercion. So one must be aware of that. That's not just an adult who might be perpetrating such inappropriate behavior.
Dr. Lightman, this is a crucial point that you're making, and I would like to add a statistic which I'm sure that you're aware of. But research has shown time and again that a child, to use, I'm now going to turn into Williamsburg's speech for one word, a child who has been molestated, that's how we say it in Williamsburg, in this neck of the woods, a child who has been molestated, 30% of those children grow up to molestrate other people.
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, that's very, very important to see what's going on, because many times all these things are underreported because it's regarded with children, especially with children and children. Oh, well, it's normal because they do experimental behavior. And the parents will be scared. What will be said of that child, either in the present or in the future when it comes to shidduchim. But it's very important that everybody get help, because when you have a perpetrator and a victim, both must get help, because they can continue to engage in these age-inappropriate behaviors in the future if they haven't been addressed. But the most important thing is to realize that when it comes to a child, the younger the age of the victim, then, and the greater the amount of occurrences, or the longer that there's a delay of reporting such an abuse, or if they feel that the family is not really giving them much support when they do reveal it, these individuals will unfortunately grow up and continue and become abusers themselves. And many times you got to be careful. What is it, a molester? Is it somebody who prefers children, or such as a pedophile or pedastry, or is it somebody that is really not that attracted to a child, but if the child's available at that time, then it becomes more situational? The problem is in society today, there's a complete over-sexualization of the child when they dress, and especially girls are given adult clothing to wear. And we're living in a society that we're back to the time of the Mabul, which is quite appropriate that this week's Parsha, where it's an antinomian society. There's no norms or mores left in society today. And what happens as a result, with the children, they don't know anymore what is right and wrong, because even if you're not aware of all the media, there's a tremendous amount of bombarding of the lack of what is a male role and a female role. Everything used to be, well, it's a male role, a female role, a stereotyping, and it's not true, because in halacha, a woman is in a very, very prominent role, even though we might say as a man, isha, but a woman is respected because she is a makabel. The man has the ashwa, the woman is makabel. It's the woman who brings everything to fruition. She's the one who runs the home. The man is able to just give his input, and it's the woman who takes everything. But unfortunately, if you remove role between husband and wife and woman, then you get a confused society. And that's why we've got all this stress today of not calling anybody male, female, birth certificates will say male, female, or other. And it's very, very confusing for a child that's growing up, especially when they get to the age where their hormones are much more prevalent. Then they don't know how to control or to behave. And they can become victimized, or themselves can become the perpetrator. So it's very important for parents to talk to children at an early age. And you don't talk to them in a frightening manner or scaring them, but you have to make them feel very proud of themselves, have a positive self-image. And you always have to listen to a child to pick up the nuances if there's something going wrong. So you have to say to a kid, look, for example, you're going to come at summer camp, you're going to be in a very close environment with a lot of other people. So if something's making you feel uncomfortable, then you should talk about it. You can tell us, you talk to the counselor, you talk to the head of the camp, and you prepare them in advance for all these things that might be going on, either in a dorm environment or in a camp environment. And you say to them, look, you have to respect your own body and other people's bodies, and there's no touching. And if you have a gut feeling that's making something uncomfortable, then believe in your gut feeling, believe in yourself. And you encourage them to talk to the staff and say, look, it's not Lashon Hara. And the reason I'm sending you to camp or to school, I love you, I want you to have a great time, I want you to feel safe at all times. And then when the kid has that feeling that they know that you trust them and you believe in them and you can have an open relationship, then the kid should be more protected and be aware of anything that's inappropriate happening, so they're more likely to open up. I always tell the kids, if somebody wants to come to you and touch or do anything like that and you don't like it, then you scream and then you run away. Because many times, even if they can't escape, if they felt that they screamed, it means they did something. It wasn't that they were just passive.
Dr. Lightman, I want to stop you there to ask you a very crucial question. Now, as I told you in our preparatory discussion before we went on to the air, so to speak, I like to conduct an interview in a way which is more a little deeper, dig a little deeper, sort of like the analogy of National Public Radio as opposed to regular talk radio. So I want to ask you the following question. Although there might be an assumption that X amount of cases where somebody is dealing, particularly same gender attraction, a male is dealing with a male child, etc. In such a case, it could be that sometimes the person is doing it not that much for the intimacy aspect of it, the adult or the perpetrator, but he's doing it because he wants to exert power. To me, frankly, I just want to say this without dwelling on it. This seems to be a construct that is favored by the anti-family chelik, the liberal chelik of society. I think they're using this as a smokescreen, as a curtain. I'm not saying it never exists, but they are upplaying it. They are exaggerating the amounts of where it's an exercise of power over another human being, rather than that it is an intimacy drive, an attraction. But here's the question. I don't want to belabor that point. I want to get to the amkus. There are two things that a child could possibly experience when he's being introduced into this kind of activity, let us call it. One is I can't escape. I feel intrinsically uncomfortable, but I can't escape because that person is a person of power. That person is a prestigious person. He's a popular person. He's an adult, etc. That's one. And then there's another feeling, which I don't think in 98% of people who, even if they do interviews like this, they might not discuss this, but I think it's crucial because without this, I believe that we're missing the mark. That is that the child might experience physical feelings of enjoyment, of pleasure. It's not that the person is violating him in an aggressive manner, but he's groomed him, and he's making him feel good. He's giving him touching massages, whatever it is, and the child actually enjoys it. So if you only tell the child, if you feel uncomfortable, scream.
Okay, so you do have two things going on there. Number one is obviously the molester who is grooming and looking for a particular child will get that child. He will groom him. He'll show him favors. He will eventually have him in an isolated place and say, look, I'm doing this to you. I love you. I care for you. I'm your protector. You can come to me anytime. And then he will carry out his dastardly deed. Now, once, it might just start off as a gentle touch in it, but if it gets to a much more serious thing, it's much worse, with perpetration, etc., then the kid does feel pain initially, but because it's done in a way where he's rewarded and he's given all these favors and he's also scared to report somebody on authority, then it does become eventually pleasurable because it depends, obviously, how things are done, that it's not in a non-perpetrated manner, then it is pleasurable for the adolescent or such, and they're not going to necessarily report it, but it can be repeated on a much more frequent basis, and that's why you'll find sometimes it will go on for years before eventually the cycle is broken, or the kid, or now the adolescent, or even the young adult might report all these episodes. Yes, it's correct that it can be pleasurable, and it all depends who the perpetrator.
So I'm bringing this point out for a specific reason. And as an expert, I want to propose something to you, and I'd like to hear your response. I could be way off, etc. First of all, there are certain books that have been put out which are used, like that appeal to young children. That is a way of reading the book with them. I forget the names of these books, but they're available. That explain to the children how not to be touched inappropriately and what to do, and etc., etc. Now that's a very good methodology, a very good medium, a very good way of dealing with the child, because you can read the book together. That's great. If there would be videos, if the Frum community would have appropriate videos, maybe there is such a thing, I think it would be even better. But here's the point that I would like to make. It all comes back, in other words, in the world of Kiruv, Rechoikim. So there are various viewpoints. Some say the Shabbos meal, the way to a person is a Geschmack Shabbos meal with good food and good singing, has succeeded many times in being Makarev. And then there's the Litvische Derech. Litvische Derech is you sit down with the person after the Shabbos meal and you start to learn with the first Pirkei Avos, and then you teach him a Mishnah, you tell him a piece of Tosfos, and he's intellectually stimulated in the Koyach of Torah, and that's the ultimate way. So what I'm saying is, in terms of schooling children, educating them, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure or more. How about the age-old thing, Torah concept called snius? That means that parents and Rabbeim and across the board in society, imagine if there would be every year when the kids go to camp, at the beginning of the camp, age appropriate, there are several gatherings where the rabbi of the camp, whoever the appropriate person is, speaks about snius, first of all.
Okay, so first of all, every camp should have in their policy what to do if such a situation occurred. And a parent is their right and their privilege, and they should ask every camp before they send their child there, what is your policy if such and such an event occurred? Do you investigate it? Do you immediately remove the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator? Do you send them home from camp? Because you've got to have a policy where the child feels protected. It's got to feel safe. There's someone that he can talk to. And it's very important that when the kid goes to camp, that the child is informed in a very, very non-threatening, non-scary manner as to how to look after themselves, about sneers, how to change, etc. That all camps should have such a policy enforced, that they should talk to the counselors in advance. That it's also important in the schools, that the schools should have a similar policy, and the rebbeim and the hell of the school should be aware that unfortunately things do occur. And it can be from, unfortunately, a rebbe. It can be from an adult. It can be from the janitor. It can be from other children to other children. But we have to be aware in society that we are not immune to the schmutz that goes on in the rest of the world. And it's all infiltrated and permeated through our own society. But going back to a camp, all rooms in a camp that do not have to be used for any particular purpose should be closed and out of bounds, so that no two people go into one locked room with no access to anybody seeing it. That all classrooms should have a door, and it should be glass on the top of the door that you can see into the room at all times. And just like if a person is talking to a Rav, there should be a camera in the room so that no one can accuse the Rav of anything inappropriate. So too, should there be cameras in the schools watching for any inappropriate behavior. And we have to be aware and teach our kids at an early age, this is your body, this is something to be proud of, it's something that sneers. We don't show it to other people, we don't touch other people, we don't let other people touch us. And that's the way life is, because it's a beautiful body that Hashem has given to us, there's nothing wrong. But there's a thing called sneers, and that's how we do things in life.
You know, I want to insert a very interesting factoid, which I've referenced occasionally on this program over the years. In the writings of the Satmar Rebbe, they actually have verbatim a shmooze that the Satmar Rebbe, I'm talking about Rev Yoel Teitelbaum, so we're going back at least 50 to 55 years ago, maybe more. It was a different time. And he said in a drasha to Machanchem that they have to teach the children about what he referred to it as Kedushas HaYesod, which is another terminology for tznius. It's all the same ball of wax. And he used the words from a very young age. And in the reprinting of his shmooze, you find something that you don't find anywhere else. They printed that somebody interjected, a Rebbe, and he said, Rebbe, from a very young age? I mean, you know, because by the Hasidisha, Befrat, they don't want to discuss these things until it's close to the chuppah. It's very admirable, it's very nice. And the Rebbe answered yes. And he reinforced from a very young age, he says, if not, they're going to learn it from the street, and it's going to be detrimental, if not catastrophic. Now, if he was a Das Yochid, it's so funny because you have thousands of people who follow the Satmar Rebbe, and even the ones who are Pupa Hasidim or Tzelem Hasidim from the lesser Hasidus also follow the Satmar Rebbe on most things. But if that's not enough, the Sklerner Rebbe, the original one, not the one who was just Nifta, his father, who counseled, they say, as many as 1,000 Bochrim who had problems with Chet HaYodua, and the Rebbe also made a gathering of Mechanchem and said the same thing. And yet, for some strange reason, 40 or 50 years or more later, we are still finding a tremendous amount of reluctance in many parts of the Haredi community to deal with this. And it's really crazy, if you ask me.
It's not only the Haredi community, it's all over the frum world. The problem is that we want to be appropriate, we want to talk about topics in a serious manner, but when it comes to sexuality or male-female bodily function, that is completely taboo, and people do not discuss it. And the problem is that when young couples do get married, there are a lot of problems with intimacy and consummation of their marriage. And I think it's incumbent on all teach the Chosan and Kala appropriately and to use correct terminology in explaining to them the joys and intimacy of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us as a beautiful experience, and nothing that Hashem has given us or created us with is bad. Everything is to be used for the appropriate way, is a beautiful experience. And if we learn that our bodies are beautiful creations, B'Tselem Elokim, and that it's used appropriately, then we're fulfilling the divine command that Hashem has given us. But you have to be aware, you have to be educated, and we cannot put our heads in the sand anymore as to what's going on in the rest of the world, because it is so distorted, it is so corrupt that it affects us. When you have on a birth certificate today, male, female, other, and you're not choosing your child's identity and all that, it's absolute unadulterated garbage. But you're not allowed to say that because it's not politically correct. So we walk with eggshells for not being politically correct, because you might be attacked and you'll be tarred and feathered or threatened, because nobody has respect for somebody who's got moral values, long as you respect somebody else who can spew forth unadulterated garbage.
Dr. Lightman, having been around the block, proverbially, for many, many, many years now, I understand that in many, many areas of Yiddishkeit, things unfortunately work from the bottom up. That means this is the way the system is. You see, the Gedolei Yisrael, Choshev Rabbanim, who have hearts and they care deeply, but they're busy, number one, with their institutions, their own yeshivas, their own shuls, their own kehillas, their own chasidus, and they are bombarded with all kinds of things. So this has been the way the situation is for hundreds of years, at least, if not more. So the way things work is when certain lay people, balabatim, askonim, etc., come to them and say, there's this and this and this problem, and when the snowball gains enough velocity going up the hill and it starts to roll down the hill, and that's when you'll see a kol koirei or a rabbanim speaking or acting, etc., etc. And in this particular situation, since it's particularly unpleasant, so as much as possible, I'm sorry to say, as much as possible, the initiatives are not going to come. They haven't come, and they're not going to come from the top. And I will even dare say something politically incorrect, that I'm saying it, you're not saying it. The self-same organizations that we look to, the umbrella organizations, whether it's Agudas Israel, OU, Lubavitch, whatever it is, to expect them to trigger meaningful change, upgrading in educating our parents and our children so that we can avoid these things as an ounce of prevention, to expect from them when they're busy supporting the institutionalized politicians who are turning the other cheek or actively voting for a lot of this immoral stuff, is unrealistic. So the only way this is going to happen is if we're going to have the experts saying, en masse, enough of them, we have to create curricula in the schools and that parents can use individually in depth that will help prevent. I mean, that's what we need. We really need all of the people, the experts, to get together and create a curriculum that will be appropriate. There will be nuanced, shaded differences for a Hasidic group or a modern Orthodox group, obviously, or a yeshivish group. But we've got to see something far more comprehensive. If we want to, if we want to address this thing.
Sure, I think all teachers and schools have to be, one, aware of themselves, and B, that the way they then impart it to the children or adolescents or even the young adults is also very important. And there are books available and organizations who do discuss appropriate touching and what's safe, etc. There are other books about that in the frum world now, which are important to be followed. And I think we're on the right track, but Unfortunately, we live in a world where behavior is always going to be somewhat deviant as long as it's pleasurable, and it's a taiva, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu gave us taivas to overcome, and it's very difficult for some people to overcome them, but with tefillah and help of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, B'ez Hashem will have a much more perfect society, and we'll be the light unto all the nations.
Dr. Lightman, just as we come towards a conclusion, you mentioned something that I'd like to spend a moment on, if I may, which is you said that compared to the secular society, the Gentile society, the general society, the statistics of child abuse in our community is considerably less. And to me, I'm not an expert in statistics. I don't know. But are you saying this because of an optimistic feeling, or because rationally it should be less, or are there actual statistics or studies that would bolster and augment, this contention of yours?
Okay, so rationally, I would love to believe it doesn't exist. Reality, it doesn't.
No, not that it doesn't exist. I'm asking you, how do you know it's so little? Maybe it's more. Maybe it's more.
I'm saying it's there. It exists. But because we are a society that has the Torah, we are a society where we try to curtail taivas. We are a society where we try to do good. Therefore, it's not where in the Goyish philosophy of today is make yourself happy, be free, do whatever you have to do. Try not to harm anybody in the process, but let your inner self out. That is the latest philosophy in psychology, is that you shouldn't be able to
squelch. You shouldn't squelch.
To control yourself.
Right.
Because that's not important. It's important is to let your inner feelings prevail. In the frum world, we don't go by that. We're not governed by that nonsense. So therefore, definitely, there's much less in the frum world. But is it prevalent? Sure it is, because everybody in this world has some type of taiva, whether they're not honest in business, whether they might be abusive to their spouse, whether they have cussed, and we all have different things that we do the shaman and begadnu for, but it is definitely less in the frum world. I can't give you statistics. Unfortunately, I do think it's also covered up more, because it's shanda, babusha, and it's something that no one wants to talk about, although they're much more aware of it today, and there are people coming forward. And I think education is the most important thing, that if we educate the educators themselves, the camp directors, the parents, and then the children themselves, then I think we are much better off, and the message of everything should be somewhat improved.
Dr. Lightman, I want to share this with you and with the audience. I had a Rebbe, Rev. Avigdor Miller, and if he would still be around, Zeichat Tzadik Livrocha, I would be able to ask him, and I would receive an answer for this instantaneously. And now I don't know the right hashkafa person to ask the following question, but I think it pertains very much to what we're discussing, this crucial thing this evening, which is as follows. The Chazal tell us, Ser Be'isha Erva, that seeing a woman's hair is a bechina of Erva, meaning the Chazal are saying that it's attractive to the person. It could cause hirhurim and thoughts, etc. And there's even halachas about saying sheva brachas, where women are sitting with the men and uncovered hair, etc., without getting into the halachic aspects of this. But here's a theory. My theory is, possibly because Kedoshim Tiyu Ki Kodesh Ani Hashem, because we are the harbingers, we are the representatives of Hashem's Kedusha. So therefore, in a secular society where boys and girls, say, are mixed up in co-ed classes and in co-ed situations, and there's they are used to dressing in a not theistic way, it could be that it requires a higher threshold for them to become stimulated, excited, thinking hirhurim, etc., because as the pasuk says, zer masum zer masusim, it's a different thing. But because Klal Yisrael is charged with kedusha v'tznius and with being sensitive to all these things, and with v'lo sasuru, so things that a Gentile or a secular person say, what? That stimulates, that attracts, that causes avera, that causes this. It's nothing with nothing. In other words, ser be'isha, be'erva be'isha, ser is considered erva, might be more for the Jew than it is for the Gentile, meaning that our threshold, or what can set us off by design spiritually, because this is our nisayon, this is our challenge, it might be things that don't necessarily set off the general society, might easier set us off. And if that theory is correct, it just emphasizes again how much more careful we have to be in the type of clothing that we give to our children, in the type of things that we let them see that might not affect the secular society as much as it affects our children.
Okay, the point is, unfortunately, that kids today are exposed to much more things than they should be. They're exposed to things that parents were never exposed to generations ago. We live in a society where everybody's cell phone is immediately available to what's happening in Timbuktu 2 minutes ago, and all that in effect affects the parents, affects the child, because if there's a bombing in somewhere in North Africa, the kid knows about it and they panic, and that's why we've got a much higher amount of anxiety and phobias and even depression in kids today than we ever had before. When it comes to the way people are dressing and all that, sure, we have a barrier where we have tznius, we have a barrier between the male and female, and if it's done in the correct manner, it shouldn't be a problem. If you go overboard, then that can cause a problem later on in life, because everything's also no good. Turn your eyes from this, turn your eyes from the woman, don't look at her, she's second class. That's inappropriate. And then it causes intimacy relationships when they grow up. But we have to approach everything with a iron tov, and then say, look, we live in a world that's crazy. We have the Torah. We've got to follow the dictates of the Torah. We've got to have derech, cover the Torah, listen to the Rabbanim who are educated enough, and we've got to have respect for one another. And unfortunately, if you don't have a kavod tov to your fellow human being and thank them if they nice to you, or they can say good morning and smile at each other, then I think that is a major flaw in our society, is that there's a lack of a kavod tov and respecting that each person is created b'tzelem Elokim.
Listen, Dr. Lightman, I want to really thank you for being with us. And as I mentioned, this will be the first of an ongoing. We'd like to speak to other professionals and to plumb the depths of this particular problem, this ever-hovering malaise that we have. As around 10, 12 years ago, when Nachum Rosenberg first started to talk, before he went off the deep end, when he started to talk about this, he did a tremendous favor for the community, because Dov Heiken picked up on this. And there was a New York Times article going back already 10, 12 years ago that he had accumulated 960 people who were abused at various stages of life. Some of these people were in their 20s or 30s, some of them were 10, 15, etc. And a list of over 60 people who were serial abusers, because most of them who do it are recidivists and they do it again and again. And I'm sure that Heiken was just scratching the surface. So I want to give, for those people who did follow my request to take a pen and paper, the hotline number is 641-715-3800, 641-715-3800, and you have to put in a code 811-504 pound, 811-504 pound. Now, this hotline is not necessarily to report child abuse. This hotline is experts who are giving drushes, who are giving lectures that you can listen to at your leisure for every responsible parent, grandparent, mechanech, to hear the the smorgasbord of different professionals giving advice, and that hopefully we could sensitize and educate the community. And as I said, an ounce of prevention is worth many pounds of cure. So Dr. Lightman, I really thank you for making yourself available. And I wish you continued hatzlacha and all the wonderful things you're doing.
Amen. And same to you and to all of Klal Israel.
Thank you. Kol tuv.
Thanks.
Rabbi Sai, we're going to have a little musical interlude of Hanukkah music because, as I said, there is a big connection between Sukkot and Hanukkah, and the preparation for Hanukkah and dealing with Hoida'ah, Hakaras HaToiv, is a major part of Hanukkah, Lahoidesu Lahalel. Dr. Lightman was on target. And in addition to that, the even bigger connection is we have to deal not only with the Yavanim, with the outside forces, but in preparation for Hanukkah, we have to clearly identify and deal with the Misyavni forces within our community. It's ironic that people are going to celebrate Hanukkah, as I mentioned at the outset, with latkes and with cheeses and with donuts, but they're going to miss out on taking a magnifying glass and doing some self-introspection on ourselves and our community. How much are we impacted by the Misyavnikite? So let's have a little musical interlude, and then we'll come back with part 2 and the conclusion of this week's program, Parshas Noach, part 2. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.